Welcome to the latest podcast episode, and this week I'm going to be talking to you about, powerful reading. Those of you who follow me on social media will have come across this potentially already, but as you know, I do like to labour points, and I want to give as much value as I can in as many ways as I possibly can. So I believe that a lot of people are reading, but they're not reading as well and as powerfully as they could be. And equally, if you're not a reader, like I wasn't a few years ago, then I really implore you to start consuming some of the personal development books that are out there. But to do so in the best possible way, it'd be well worth listening to this podcast and seeing if this is a way that you could start. So this is for experienced readers, intermediate readers, and anybody who's thinking about doing it. And it can also be just audiobooks as well in theory. But what I want you to do is look at this whole model and maybe consider doing the whole level rather than just having audibles or just having the book to listen to this whole process. So what do I mean about powerful reading? So first and foremost, a lot of people, clients of mine, people I know, have read a book and it's deeply impacted them from the moment they've read it, they've put it down, and they're really engaged and they want to make the changes that they've learnt about from reading the book. However, as is often the way, if not possibly always the way, life happens, time ticks on, and those things that we'd wanted to implement have faded in our memory. And even though we've made notes in the books, perhaps, or we've set a few actions in motion, it's started to fall away. And we always remember that particular book that we'd always wanted to do something about, or somebody maybe mentions it to us a few months later and we're like, oh yeah, I remember that book and I really wished I'd done a few things with it, but yet we haven't. So what I'm proposing here is a way of mitigating that. So now when I take on a new book to read, I do three things. I will, where possible, get the audible version of this book. And if it's on Audible, brilliant. If it's a different audio form, then I will look for it. I will also buy the hard copy of that book. And I'll also have a folder or notebook with me. And how I will now approach reading is I will play the Audible through my headphones. I will have the book in front of me and I will have a notebook to the side of me. And every single time I hear something of value, if I'm sitting down and able to do so, I will pause the Audible, mark a point in the book and reference it in my notebook as to what page number that was, with a brief note as to why I have liked that particular piece. Then what I tend to find is at the end of the book, I might have made as few as 5 notes, or in certain cases, a couple of pages worth of notes. But I take a book of mine, a particular favourite, something called Drive by a guy called Daniel Pink. Thoroughly recommend it. If you haven't read it, maybe make this your first one to experiment with. Now I know in my little yellow folder that I carry around, I've made around about 50 notes. And if I just look at the notes on their own, I don't know exactly why I've made it, but it struck a bit of a chord with me, and the fact that I've referenced it is an important thing. But because I then mention the page number or numbers, maybe it's a couple of pages, I will immediately look at that reference, go to the book and read it, and I will remember exactly why that particular point was relevant to me. And the commitment that I now make with myself is that I'm not allowed to read a note that I've made and the pages in the book without committing to an action. And from that, I might only then pick one note, one action, and start applying it. But suddenly, already, from reading that book and listening to the Audible, I have made a life-changing action. I've set it in motion. It may be very, very small, but as you all will know, if you've followed me for any period of time, I'm a massive fan of The Slight Edge. And by making that one start, that one change, assuming that I commit to it and agree to keep doing it, then we are going to notice changes. And if you suddenly take a book like Drive, where I've maybe got 50 actionable notes that I've made, that's potentially 50 new actions that I might set in motion. And suddenly, a book that just had an impact with me and stayed with me for a few days is now there for the long haul. I'm actually going to make it part of my daily habits where appropriate. I'm going to make changes in my business or my personal life based on notes that I've made. And more importantly, you've taken a life-changing personal development book and made it absolutely actionable. And for me, that just makes reading a whole lot more powerful, and I thoroughly recommend you give it a go.